Salam tana, Taina Yistalin. Ne Ras Yadinos Tefarine. Greetings, I am Ras Iadonis Tafar of the Lineage of Society of His Imperial Majesty and a member of the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated. I just got a article. I'm on a couple different blogs and email groups where certain updates and posting on some of our interest are basically received and exchanged. And one particular blog or one particular group that we are a member of, and let's see if we could bring this up right here. Just open our mail again. Is Black History. It's a particular, I think it's a page that we had subscribed to, and there's a sister, I think it's a sister based on her email handle and everything. The sister who posts, and her name is her handle is Miss Joe 21 ST, like Miss Joe 21 Saint, something to that, or 21st maybe century, 21st Saint. I'm not too sure exactly, but anyway, we received interesting mail, and the mail was actually originally named how African Union let down Africa. How African Union let down Africa, and it was posted on May 2nd, 2011. May 2nd, 2011. Now, this particular article, which we have read and perused, and we haven't really gone into, you could say, the fine minutiae of detail as of yet. We have not gone into that fine minutiae of detail as of yet, but from what we have gathered, we got a pretty good idea, and it's an important article, although we have some informed differences of opinion, but the title and the focus and the conversation, this first and foremostly, we would like to thank Miss Joe for this particular posting that she has posted on Black History on the Ning site, Black History, because it at least helps us to hopefully begin a conversation. We really need to begin a conversation about this. And the title, once again, is the African Union has let Africa down, or actually her response to, I think, another article or conversation that's going on is how the African Union has let Africa down. And those of us who, some may consider ourselves revolutionary, some may consider ourselves Ethiopianist, some may consider ourselves actually African Zionists, and this is something that a lot of our people are not really aware of. The first thing that comes to mind if we say African Zionists is they're going to think about the so-called European Khazars and Edomites and converted Jews, and say, "Oh, you must be down with them, and you're in their hip pocket, so forth, because they don't really understand who they be, or really the real dimensions, the real dimensions of this spiritual and even temporal warfare. There's a spiritual and a temporal warfare going on. But the article that Miss Joe 21 Saint has put up is very important for us to scrutinize and consider, because let's get into just a little bit of this, the first couple of paragraphs, and just give you a little awareness of what this particular article and the point of view is actually all about. It begins off, says that today two emergencies present the toughest tests to revolutionary African leaders in the history of the continent. These are the cases of Cote d'Ivoire and Libya. In Cote d'Ivoire, imperialism, and in brackets, in the form of France and NATO, in parentheses, has already shown and achieved the objective which it is still pursuing in Libya, and that is the violent unseating of a legitimate African leader and the installation of a stooge or stooges, while the burnt palace of the overthrown incumbent is still smoldering. Now, of course, there's more to this particular article, but let's first at least begin to lay down our response and rebut, not to the general or the overall objective. The overall objective that Miss Joe 21 has posted, we share that overall objective. The overall objective is basically to point out that the African Union has let Africa down. However, it's not just the African so-called Union or the Martin. Remember, originally it was the OAU. You understand, that was founded by the true revolutionary leaders, such as Kedemawi Haile Selassie. You remember what the scripture says, the scriptures that was known in Africa before it was known in Europe, the Bible, the Bible, the oldest really comes out of Africa. The root comes out of Africa. I think you should know that, because some folks, because of white supremacy and counterfeit Christianity and whitewashed, blonde hair, blue eyed Jesus, just has thrown away our identity as Hebrews. This is the first and the foremost point that we have to point out, that it's not just the so-called African Union that has let Africa down, but it's so-called we as so-called African hyphenated Americans, and those of us who consider ourselves to be Afrocentric or to be so-called revolutionary or about the motherland. It's not just the so-called Africans and the African Union that has let Africa down, but it's we, the so-called diaspora, the lost sheep over here in the North Country of the Americas and the Caribbean, who have also, especially those so-called revolutionaries and intellectuals, it's them or us, if we want to be collective about it, who have let Africa down. You understand? Who are really very much responsible, you understand, not for the actions, direct actions being taken over there in Africa and North Africa and Libya and Cote d'Ivoire, you understand, but for the fact that they are even able, the so-called white supremacists and the neo-imperialists and the Europeans and Anglo-Americans are able to do what they are able to do, and there's no effective response from us over here, who are really, you can say, the most so-called advanced black people, you understand, in the, we could say we're the most advanced black people basically within the 21st century in the Americas. Not saying that we're the best or any of that, but I'm talking about where we're at, what our experience as the so-called descendants, you understand, the descendants of enslaved Africans, who actually, if we properly identify who these enslaved Africans are, and this is what a lot of our Afrocentric people have refused to do, and still dance around the point and run away from really recognizing that the so-called enslaved Africans are the lost sheep of the house of Israel. In other words, we are Israel. In particular, we African Americans are Judah. You understand? Are the diaspora of the tribe of Judah, or the so-called true Jews, the black Jews. You understand? And see, this is the crux. This is the crux, to say the cross. This is where we're at, the crossroads. This is the crux of the matter. And therefore, if we don't first of all identify, well, who we are in this struggle, the first thing we have to do is identify who we so-called blacks in the Americas, Africans or African Americans in the Americas really are. And we have not done that. Many of our intellectuals and scholars, we give them much credit, you understand, for even stimulating, You understand? Stimulating our awareness and bringing to the table much facts and proofs, art and facts of who we are as black people and the greatness of us as black people, and more of our history and our roots, you understand, of black people. Because post the PTSD, the post traumatic slave dis-ease and disorder, we could say really post terrorism or terroristic slavery dis-ease. You understand? The post terrorism slavery disease. And we say terrorism slavery or terroristic slavery, we're talking about overt. You understand? Because we're in a period of covert. Of covert so-called white supremacy, and we are victims. We as black people in the Americas and the Caribbean, we are victims of the worst terroristic act that has occurred. The worst terroristic act that has occurred on the shores, one of the worst. Well, I would say actually it was the worst, actually. If we don't recognize that what we have experienced as a people, you understand, is one of the worst terroristic acts, as well as it was far more devastating in its long continuance than the so-called Holocaust of the Jews who say they are Jews, but are not. You understand? The majority of the European Jews, they're converted, and maybe there's a couple of very good Jews or Jews that really understand and really, you know, have helped black folks, or even recognize that we really are the black sheep of the family. The black Jews are the real Jews. And when I'm speaking about we are black Jews or black Judahites or black Hebrews, we're not just talking about a particular group of Israelites that you may see in Times Square or in certain other main concourses, you understand, and speaking and out there, because there are many different, you know, in my father's house there are many mansions, so we have to recognize that. But this is a very important point, and it just amazes, in a sense, it amazes, but also shocks. And sometimes it just seems devastating when you recognize how smart our people and educated many of our people, even many of them self-educated, they are, but still they don't recognize the very first principles that they should have recognized long time ago, or at least at some time they should recognize and grasp onto. Because if we don't recognize who we are, if we just say, well, we're just Africans, we were just enslaved and we don't know where we came from, and we are doing injustice to all the affirmative research that our people, black folks over here, intellectuals and scholars and historians and others have done, that really positively, unquestionably, without any doubt whatsoever, identifies who we are, the so-called African Americans. You understand? Ethiopians abroad, Ethiopian Hebrews. We are the black so-called Jews, the Judahites. The African Americans are the Judahites. You understand? According to the prophetic, prophecies of Scripture, and this is another fact and an aspect, because we can go through and actually, we actually saw a lot of this already coming. You understand? Because we have been made aware, and have accepted the awareness. We have accepted, you understand, the cross. We've accepted that the crux of our identity. You understand? And humbly have learned and grown and really see it for what it is. Not taking. You see a lot of our Negroes, black folks, N-words, by-word folks and people, they like to say, yeah, Jesus was black and all of this, and Moses was black and the Bible's a black book. They'll concede that, but they're all stolen out of Egypt. This is this little cop-out, this little cowardice, this little retardation that goes on among so-called black intellectuals and Afrocentrics, so forth and so on. Basically, what they do is acknowledge the Bible. They acknowledge Jesus Christ, or Yehoshua HaMashiach. They acknowledge Yeshua. They acknowledge Jesus Christos. They acknowledge that Jesus Christ is really not blonde hair, blue eyed. They acknowledge that Moses, yes, black. They acknowledge Africa. They will refer fleetingly, very fleetingly, to Ethiopia, and then they will come back to their African Americanism, Negroisms, you understand, and approach it like the white man this and the white man that and so forth and so on, and black power, you know, and then they'll, you know, and get to the point of black supremacy, so forth and so on. We're going to take over and the sun is going to burn everybody, and not recognize, you know, we're not saying this to be facetious, but before we even get into, we can say, more of the heart of responding to this particular article, because this article right here just brings to mind what we've been already discussing and documenting and posting videos and doing lectures about, and even, you know, writing many notes and manuscripts. And what we probably most likely need to do is also to publish some more of the already prepared notes and manuscripts that have actually gone into the details and gotten facts to prove what we're saying, because we know a lot of folks will say, listen, I've been studying black history, Afrocentricity, and I haven't heard that, I don't know that, you're just making that up. That's what a lot of the niggas say, because they, you know, this conceit, this pride. You know what I'm saying? Because most of these Negroes who may know a little bit more about themselves or about black people and black history, you know, and ancient history, and the Egyptians and the Kamite or the Kemet and everything like that, they still have not been born again. They still are uncircumcised in their consciousness. See, this is the problem with the niggas, with the N-words. This is why we say from the very beginning that, yes, we agree with Miss Joe 2021, you know what I'm saying? We agree with the black history, this clarion call and the must read, and we give thanks for that. You know what I'm saying? And this is, of course, please be mature, don't take this personal, you understand? But you miss the heart of the matter. You've missed the boat of it, and that means that the interpretive, once you don't have the primary, the prerequisites, if you don't have the prerequisites, if you have not taken the prerequisites, if you have not taken the prerequisites courses and have not passed in the prerequisite studies, then properly or rightly, you're unqualified. And you're not going to do too well in those studies or courses that requires one to have such and such and such as prerequisites. I mean, those of us who have gone to college and others who may have graduated from college understand that basically. If you know, in school, you know, when they have the new semester, you get the course book. You look at the course book and you say, oh, I want to really take this subject and that subject and the next subject. And you always look at what the prerequisites are. You always got to look at what the prerequisites are, because if you haven't taken the prerequisites, you have to say, oh man, maybe okay, so maybe I'll take the prerequisites this year, you know, or this semester, and then next semester I'll you know, pass this class, and then I'll be qualified and meet the prerequisites and take it then. Sometimes students, because they so desire to take the particular class, they see what the prerequisites are and they avoid what the prerequisites are. You understand? Because they just want to do what they want to do. You understand? Undisciplined, unruly. You understand? And that does not bode well towards success. In fact, that even becomes a prerequisite for failure when you do that, when you avoid what the real prerequisites are. So most of our black people and African Americans and others over here who are upset about what's going on in Africa and in Libya and Cote d'Ivoire, and there's going to be some other areas as well, you understand, who really are upset, and they think that, well, okay, the African Union has really let Africa down. Because the same sister, actually, what was interesting, let's see if we can bring this up, she had another posting that we thought was kind of interesting, very interesting, that she said after the Bin Laden, after Bin Laden was announced to have been killed, Obama announced that Bin Laden was dead and how he was killed in special forces. Miss Joe said this. This is what Miss Joe said. Miss Joe said, this is justice done. This is what she said. She said, this is justice done. She said, down with terrorism, the method of cowards who kill innocent people. She says, hail to the Navy SEAL. God is great. all the time, Miss Joe. That sounds like in like some of the Nollywood movies when they say God is great all the time. I know it's a Christian thing, but it's been hearing that a lot, like from the Nollywood movies. But Miss Joe says, and she adds an article here that basically talks about, live stream and everything like that. The White House, Osama bin Laden is dead. According to the White House sources, Osama bin Laden has been killed in Pakistan. His body is in the U.S.'s possession. President Obama will soon deliver a statement on the matter tonight, nearly 10 years after the September 11th attacks. But she made a little comment. This was taken from someplace else. But Miss Joe, the same one that has written this article about how Africa, or the African Union, has let Africa down, has also basically said that the killing of Osama bin Laden, the announced killing of Osama bin Laden, that this is justice done. So it would appear that Miss Joe, and this is not personal, but we just want to understand this. Since we don't know the person personally, we're just looking at, what sort of articles they distribute and circulate. And one thing we will say, thank you, Miss Joe, give thanks, at least it keeps a vibrant conversation. It's whether, it's how you probably will respond to this if you hopefully get to check out what we are also posting and also what we will write, and not just response to what you're saying, but you're an inspiration in the sense of we have been addressing other relevant issues. You understand? Overtly, but also covertly studying some of these other matters that you're talking about now. You understand? Not just now, but things that are going on right now, and we just find this is an interesting contrast. This is, we would say it's a contrast more based on the contents. What is in the contents. You understand the particular contents of this particular article. Monday, the 2nd of May, 2011. Article, I think it was 11:51, I don't know if AM or PM, but the African Union having let Africa down. But our response and rebut to that is not just only that so-called modern revised, you understand, and politically maybe sodomize the African Union letting Africa down, but it's also the African hyphenated Americans, or the Africans so-called in the diaspora, and we're speaking about from our informed view, you understand, the lost sheep of the Beta Israel, the falashas of the West, those Negroes, those N-words, those bywords, you understand, who don't want to recognize their true identity. You understand, they prefer to just deal with a very nebulous and a very vague, you understand, Afrocentricity in the whole continent of Africa, you understand, but they don't want to really recognize what the true history and the true connections, you understand, with Africa are for us, especially with Imperial Ethiopia, you understand, and the real unsung hero, or we can say the unsung hero of Pan-Africanism, you understand, is not not the people you often hear mentioned, but it's the one that you often don't hear mentioned. It's the stone which the so-called the pseudo builders refused, you understand, which really is become the head cornerstone, and that head cornerstone of whom we speak is the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie I, elect of God, King of Kings of Ethiopia. You can like it or you can lump it. You know what I'm saying? I know there's a lot of folks that say, oh, he sold out Africa, oh, he was in the pocket of this or in the bed with, all these. And we've taken on a lot of these folks, their so-called allegations and blame Haile Selassie, the first crowd. We've taken on whether they are so-called native Ethiopians, whether they're dumb N-words out here, so-called Negroes out here in the Americas who are pseudo-African revolutionary, so forth and so on. We've taken them on, and some actually have acknowledged like they never knew this. Most of what we have informed them about, they were not told. When they went and researched it for themselves, they found that was true. The real one they should be about, and they should be mentioning and giving credit to and learning from his teachings, is His Imperial Majesty. It's actually His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie I. This is the real. Even Kennedy recognized this fact, and that was probably one of the facts, or one of the main things that was a part of this bunch of issues that got him assassinated, is when he met His Imperial Majesty at the railway station. And you can look it up on the YouTubes. We've posted it up there, and it's there. Kennedy meeting His Imperial Majesty, and Kennedy's speech. Listen to Kennedy's speech when he met Haile Selassie at the railway station. And listen to it and get a transcript of it, and pay attention to what's said. And he said something very interesting. He says, Your Imperial Majesty, because of His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie I, and because of that patriotic, imperial, and that holy portion of Ethiopia, 29 other African nations, 29 African nations in the space of 10 years had overcome in the initial phases white supremacy, colonialism, you know what I'm saying, and now we're independent nations, you know what I'm saying, and this sort of freedom, you understand, this revolutionary spirit, because in different countries, remember, there's 29 nations, including Ethiopia, but 29 nations. You understand? And all these nations that were part of that original, and Libya was one of them. Let's recognize Libya was one of the first. You understand? This is why we support the so-called revolutionaries more so than we do Gadhafi. You understand? Than we do Gadhafi. Now, here's where we part ways with a lot of the modern revolution, because a lot of y'all have been led to believe, and your make believe that Muammar Gaddafi, he's the real Pan-Africanist, he's the real revolutionary. And I think it's a part of, it's a part of this this uncircumcised heart that you have, and a lot of you just hate on Haile Selassie, and don't even recognize that Haile Selassie is the real revolutionary, and because many of the leaders themselves, you understand, from whether it was your Patrice Lumumbas, whether it was your Kwame Nkrumahs, whether it was your Jomo Kenyattas, whether it was the real, you understand, the real Libyan you could say leaders, you understand, who overturned the Italians. You understand? The Italians basically had Libya as a colony at that particular time, and it was those who raised the flag of the red, the black, and the green. Notice that Gaddafi took that down, and this is just people say, well, that's just a minor thing because of what was going on. No, that's a major thing. It's a major thing that Gaddafi, you understand, that Gaddafi would turn his back. He turned his back, you understand, on that particular revolutionary flag, because it wasn't just that he turned his back on those who were from the so-called eastern part of Libya, and it was an east-west, east coast, west coast, you understand, so-called scenario. It goes deeper. It goes much deeper, and a lot of y'all Pan-African so-called revolutionary, so-called whatever you want to so-call yourself, Afrocentrics, you understand, that even try to understand what's going on even in the present time, don't understand that. And if you don't understand these basic things, if you can't give a coherent, you understand, and a logical and a verifiable justification, answer, or reason for that, then you don't even know what you're talking about. You know what I'm saying? You don't even know what you're talking about, because it was Imperial Ethiopia, you understand, that supported, you understand, all of those African revolutionaries and those revolutions, you understand, not just with words, you understand, but with the actual blood, sweat, and tears. You understand? In the words, Ethiopian, native Ethiopian, Imperial Ethiopian blood was spilt, you understand, alongside their African brothers in the 29 nations 29 countries, that Kennedy at the railway station when he meets Haile Selassie 50 days before he was assassinated, actually, you understand, you just have to understand the link from all these things, and a lot of you don't know it. You understand? You just don't know. So when we read an article like we've read from or through Miss Joe, and we see on the one hand, you understand, she's like saying like justice is done in the killing of Osama bin Laden. She's like, ding dong, the wicked witch is dead. You know what I mean? That this is justice is done, and she's against this terrorism, and these are cowards, so from so on. And Miss Joe, we are inclined to agree with you there. You understand? To agree with you, we recall what Al Qaeda or so-called Bin Laden's organization and these pale red Arabs, Bedouins, and the rest of them, did. You understand? In 1998, when the Kenya embassy was bombed. But you know what? A lot of you don't know and you don't recognize. You don't even know it, so I guess you can't put together the significance. When the Kenya embassy. Remember the Kenya embassy in 1998 when the Kenya embassy was bombed? Al-Qaeda claimed responsibility. In other words, Bin Laden's organization. Many Africans were killed, were maimed, were wounded, were psychologically traumatized by this incident, and probably have not been the same ever since. You understand? So they actually, to make their Islamic or their pale Arab Mohammedan point, you understand, they actually killed Africans. You understand? Africans who happened to be, at the American embassy. But you know what, the American embassy in Kenya that was bombed, where it was located, and this is interesting. The Kenya embassy. And we caught it on a couple of news reports initially. When you hear a news story come out, you really have to try to grasp it, then record it or take down notes, and then compare it to the story that comes out later on. Because the Kenya embassy was located, the Kenya embassy that Al Qaeda and Osama bin Laden had bombed, was located on Haile Selassie Street or Haile Selassie Boulevard, on a boulevard or avenue that was named after Haile Selassie, and the cross street was Moi or Moy. American people say Moy, but people who understand that's French will say Moi. Moi means, of course it means I. So the Kenya embassy that Bin Laden had bombed back in 1998, killing all of those innocent Africans, and they were innocent, they were innocent, because remember the Bible says that they shall try to kill many of you and think they do God's service. So even the scripture, if we're properly able to understand it, it even kind of forewarns us of this this evil and demonic tendency that's going on in the East and in the West, among East and West. You understand? Because right now Africa is between two extremes. Africa is actually, this is what we don't recognize, that we're between two extremes. We're between the so-called pale red Arabs who want to set up their Islamic caliphate, you understand, or the Mohammedan state or whatever like that. And then we have white supremacy, you understand, the Anglo-Americans on the other end, who are trying to do the same thing and capture Africa and a resource for themselves. And then you also have the Chinese, you understand, but the Chinese are a little different equation and factor. You understand, we have to deal with the Chinese particular situation a little bit differently. You understand, because in fact it's probably a little better maybe to deal with some of the Chinese than to deal with the so-called Anglo-Americans. You understand? Wholeheartedly. You understand? Especially if we as African Americans are not going to be on the front lines. You understand? Most of us as African Americans who like to opine about Africa, first of all, haven't been consistently involved, even out here in the West, you understand, in being on the front lines for Africa and giving the African so-called leaders and others on the continent that support in the same way that we find like the Jews over here, the European Jews and other communities in America help to rally support, you understand, support for their cause, you understand, or for their country, like the Jews do with the state of Israel, you understand, and many of the Arabs and Palestinians do with Palestine. You understand? So they're always out there, you understand, making it known You understand that there's an issue, that there's a crisis. You understand, and they make sure that get out there. Most of us don't do that. There was a couple of protests that had occurred because of what the bombing with Obama, so forth and so on, and the bombing, the resolution 1973, so forth and so on. But then because a lot of the black people, our people, they don't want to recognize that we, first of all, are Hebrews. And if they don't recognize that the so-called Negro, the so-called niggers, the so-called N-word are really the Hebrews, and then if they don't recognize that link with holy and imperial Ethiopia and its imperial majesty, you understand, and the real dawning of the new age for us as Africans in the 1930s, if they don't make that link with Dr. Malako Emmanuel Bayan, you understand, and the Ethiopian World Federation, you understand, and Ethiopia, Imperial Ethiopia, that we are Ethiopian Hebrews. If they don't recognize that we're lost sheep and open their eyes, you understand, and repent themselves and get their hearts circumcised, then that means that they might be well-intentioned, you understand, in a lot of these things that what they're saying, and getting upset and feeling for Africa and thinking like, oh, they're taking over, look what's happening in Africa, so on and so on. But they're going to be ineffective. And this is what we've seen for nearly 40 years of ineffectiveness. You understand? And this is why, even though there's a lot of good, good intention, you understand, and good feeling for Africa, you understand, what we're doing is ineffective. And the part of the reason is because we don't really know who we are as a people. And many of the Afrocentrics have given such a broad brush, you understand, and have sidestepped the real issues. You understand? And the real issues is our true identity. You understand? As falashas, as Beta Israel, as Hebrews, as Ethiopian Hebrews. You understand? Who were sold into slavery in the transatlantic, trans-Ethiopic ocean slave trade. We were known as Ethiopians over here. You understand? On the plantation, we sung songs like "The Lion of Judah shall break every chain." These are like old so-called Negro spirituals. You understand? We understood that we had a connection with Egypt. You understand? Go down Moses. All of these things are indigenous. Even today, they're finding that there are many pockets of Hebrew, of Africans who really declare that they are Hebrew peoples. You understand? Those are some of the brothers and sisters who were able to get away, who didn't get caught up. You understand? In the transatlantic slave trade that involved, quite curiously, the Anglo-Americans, the crypto so-called Jews, the pseudo-Jews, European Jews, and it also involved the pale red Mohammedan Arabs, you understand, and their so-called African stooges. So these are the foundational things that we really need to urgently, you know what I'm saying? We need to address these things actually yesterday. You understand? But since we don't have a time machine to go back and change yesterday, we're going to have to deal with these things today. You understand? Because if we wait, tomorrow, you understand, tomorrow may be a little bit too late. You understand? So we really have to wake up right now. You understand? The urgency of the call of salvation is that today is the acceptable day. Now is the time. So, my brothers and sisters, what we're going to do, take a little pause for the cause. We're going to get into this article a little bit more. And once again, we thank you, Miss Joe, for your article, for your words, for your love, and for your concern. You understand, for Africa, and going out there and putting up this article and generating. Hopefully you put out this article to generate discussion, and hopefully you didn't think that, well, you got the end all and be all, because as we pointed out, there's some things you left out. First of all, it's not just the so-called African Union. In fact, when they went from, well, there's a couple key factors, but they went from OAU to AU. You understand? So they went from an organization of African unity, and all organization to unite Africa in that sense, to just being the African Union, the AU, like the EU. So there's important consideration, but that could only happen by us as African Americans being so disconnected. When we look at the history of when Africa really truly moves forward, it's because we as African Americans, or what we as true African Zionists, because our Zion, you understand, is Ethiopia, is Ethiopia. You know what I'm saying? Recognize that the throne of David is the throne that's imperial majesty, the elect of God, the King of Kings sits upon. So you could like it or you could lump it, so forth and so on. But, you know, beware how you slander the King of Kings. You could debate. You could debate what we're saying here. But a lot of your speculations, your allegations, your lies and blasphemies against His Imperial Majesty, what's interesting about it, the big connection with the majority of the lies that even come out from so-called African lying lips against His Imperial Majesty, the African lying lips who are part of the blame the Haile Selassie the first crowd. The very interesting connection that one's like Muammar Gadhafi, you know, has been the instigator of a lot of those things from the very first. And when you begin off to call him some revolutionary, you understand? No, he's a weak link in the chain. I mean, believe it or not, yes, the war's been going on and they're fighting and he got weapons and so forth and so on. And he had like a badass, so forth and so on. But Gadhafi is like your neighborhood drug dealer. You know what I'm saying? Your neighborhood drug dealer. And if you know about the majority of neighborhood drug dealers, and I'm talking about especially in, you know, those going around selling the crack. You understand? I mean, marijuana, we could address that, but that's a whole other issue. But still, let's talk about what really, you know, what really in the heroin back in the days, one shooting up. You understand? Because they immediately went from something like marijuana because they didn't know what was the right order to utilize, and they needed something harder, something to deaden them, something to kill them. You understand? To kill them off. But the neighborhood drug dealer, we know, you know, COINTELPRO tells us how the neighborhood drug dealer was set up. Believe it or not, like it or not, actually, Gadhafi, or so-called Gadhafi, he's like that. So when I hear some of y'all talk about, you know, that Gadhafi, he's a real revolutionary and so forth, then at the same time, y'all are putting thumbs up. You understand? Thumbs up to the killing of Osama bin Laden, you understand, and terrorism. Well, you got half of it right. You understand? I mean, how come you can't recognize that Gadhafi, he is not one of our own, and the I can say he is not one of our own, and we're not just looking at this racially, like to say Arab and African, so forth and so on. It goes much, much deeper than that. In fact, believe it or not, you understand, he's a stooge himself. You understand? He's a stooge himself because it's Gadhafi that took down the real revolutionary flag of Africa. And that revolutionary flag of Africa was the red, black, and the green. And so the so-called rebels in Africa, in Libya, you know, they call them rebels. We had said this before, that they should really be called patriots. They should really be called patriots. But see, it's the media that really is shaping and has helped to shape the story. You understand? And the story can be reshaped, but unfortunately, most of y'all are just passive. You know, you're passive receivers. You're not really actively involved. This is why we give thanks to Miss Joe 21 and others out there that are even just sharing news articles and even sharing some of their own words and ideas and some even going a next step, trying to organize some rallies or meetings or whatnot, because this is what we need to discuss these issues. But we need to, you know, put the house in order. First of all, we need to recognize, well, who are we when we talk about black history? You understand? Celebrating black history. Yes, we should celebrate black history. But it's interesting that at the root, the heart of the real black history, when we really see moves being made in Africa, in the continent, towards that revolutionary age, which was not fulfilled and complete, but it was a very, very good start. We ignore, you understand, the head cornerstone. We ignore. Most of you Negroes put up Marcus Garvey. You'll put Marcus Garvey up there. He's a real revolutionary. He slandered the King of Kings and basically did nothing. You're not even talking about the real, you understand, people. You'd be better off putting up Booker T. Washington. You understand? How about Dr. Malako Emmanuel Bayan? You don't know who he is? If you don't know who he is, then that's part of the problem. You understand? Because our true and real African American so-called foreparents over here, they knew about it. They were aware. They were involved when fascist Italy, you understand, which already had Libya as a colony, sought to invade Ethiopia. You understand? Our foreparents were involved, and this is where there was a great coming together. You understand? A great coming together of Judah. You understand? Of Judah, we can say the crown, and we the diaspora. You understand? The African American Judah, the people. There was a coming together. You understand? That emissary, that angel of that message was Dr. Malaku Emmanuel Bayin, Dr. Malaku Bayin. You understand? Who made that link between Ethiopians at home and Ethiopians abroad. You understand? But unfortunately, a lot of that as the decades went on, you understand, and other, like the civil rights came along, and that distracted a lot of folks, and the reaction to the civil rights inaction, or where the civil rights was not able to achieve certain things, going to the 70s or the end of the 60s, you know, started getting more radical. Then the COINTELPRO came in. Then in 73, 74, the revolution, you understand, was foisted by the Illuminati against Ethiopia. Then as that was dismantled, we have like once they took Ethiopia out of the equation, you understand, once Ethiopia was taken out of the equation with that godless and the creeping satanistic Illuminati coup against Haile Selassie I, you understand, once that went on, it was just a matter of, and the Cold War came into effect. They used this Cold War like they're using this terrorism thing right now. So we know that there is a rush, a snatch, and a grab. You understand? We know that this is going on for Africa. You understand? However, we as so-called African hyphenated Americans who are over here in the Americas, you understand? Those of us who are, who are so-called Americans or African Americans and or are somewhat conscious, we need to get more involved. You understand? We need to put the pressure politically, you understand, on our local leaders, our representatives, or even on the president that we were said to have elected, Obama. You understand? To make a change. In fact, Obama said this in effect. And let's just wrap up on this for a moment, because there's much more to discuss here, because there's some interesting points that were made in this article. But this is something interesting that Obama, when he was elected, he said, this is your victory. You understand? It's like he was hinting us. I remember watching Like It Is with Gil Noble's Like It Is. And he had some people from in the community, the African American and the Afrocentric community was talking about what Obama's election actually really means. And they said that, well, now is no time for us just to say like yes, we done it and to like just go back home, but now's the time for us to get more active. And they even pointed out that and Gil Noble and the brother that he was interviewing, and some other people at the African, I think some Afrocentric center, they was talking, and they said that, and this was interesting, that Obama seemed like he was hinting, especially black folks, that listen, okay, now I'm elected, I'm there, but I'm gonna need y'all. You understand? Y'all community activists, y'all out there in the struggle, y'all African liberationists and others, almost like to keep me honest. I need y'all to be out there on the ground, you understand, and continue and to step up doing what y'all are doing, because now he's in the catbird seat. Obama's in the catbird seat, but there's a lot of issues which are being thrown at him. Like, for example, the so-called European Ashkenazi and other Jews, right? The European Jews, because we're the black Jews and they're the white Jews. So you just make that, make no mistake about it. But the European Jews, even before the election, even now, they always are saying, well, what is Obama's policy on Israel, the state of Israel? How does he support? And they're always going to him. They're always sending him letters. Like they are using the political mechanism to keep their issue front and center. Now, with the ignorance that most of us as N-words and black folks and niggers and hyphenated Americans, African Americans have about our true God-given identity, which is the crux, the cross of the matter. We can't see that basically they are doing, especially the so-called white Jews are doing what we were doing before and what we should be doing now. You know what I'm saying? Consolidating their effort. You know what I'm saying? Consolidating more the effort. And even if we're not agreed in the sense like that we are more Ethiocentric and say you're more Afrocentric, but still, you understand? Engage the White House. But most niggas have this give up, especially when you have an uncircumcised heart, you know, and you're not really truly born again. You may got some knowledge, but the knowledge does what? The Bible tells us knowledge puffs up. So most of them got this knowledge, like we black people, we did this, we did that, and you know, so they got this like kind of arrogancy, you understand, to the white man and to everybody else, and then it starts to fall back on itself. Then it becomes an arrogancy to each other. You know what I'm saying? So then we start to get these Negroes who, yeah, they got some knowledge and so forth and so on. You understand? But they fall off. They become ineffective. And I just got to put it out there. I mean, what's up with Dr. York? I mean, what's up with Dr. York? I mean, I would think that some of y'all should be even petitioning Dr. York to commute. I mean, petitioning actually on behalf of Dr. York, but petitioning President Barack Obama, you understand, to use some federal or presidential leverage. I mean, even in backdoor ways, he got black folks around him. You know what I'm saying? You're waiting for his second term to do it. I mean, you could still be doing a little bit now. You understand? Instead of I'm hearing a lot of these so-called revolutionary Afrocentric leaders and Afrocentric folks in the community, you know, they're like F Obama, F him. You know, not all of them, but you know, it's like you get to see one sinking into this despair, yeah, becoming hopeless. You understand? I mean, they got all that knowledge, but they're hopeless because really it's a spiritual change that must come first, or must come alongside that gnosis, that gnosis. It can't just be based on, yeah, I seen this video, I seen this book, yeah, and just get all hyped. No, there must be a spiritual change, a true spiritual change. You understand? I'm not talking about going to all that unga bunga and whatnot. I'm talking about, first of all, recognizing who we are. We are Hebrews. You know what I'm saying? We are the lost sheep of the Beta Israel. We are the falashas of the West. We are Ethiopian Hebrews. We are elect Rastafari. In my father's house, there are many mansions. Yes, we got some more radical Hebrew Israelites. You understand? But in spirit and in truth, the basics, about the basics of who we are, even the Hebrew Israelites know that. You understand? There's many other type of black Jews and Israelites. So you know, make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it. It's not only the African Union that has let Africa down, but we as so-called hyphenated African Americans have also, you understand, especially those of us who so-called are conscious. You understand? Those of us who claim to be revolutionaries. You understand? We have also let Africa down. You know what I'm saying? Because our unconditional support, you understand, for ones like Gadhafi. You know what I'm saying? I mean that right there really, it just continues to surprise me. I'm like, this guy's like a pimp. He's like the version of the neighborhood African pimp / drug dealer. You understand? The neighborhood. Are you afraid of Gadhafi? I mean, is this, or has he bought you off? And then when Miss Joe posted the thing about the killing of Bin Laden, it's just the most interesting thing, because when Miss Joe posted that the other day, she wrote, "This is justice done. Down with terrorism. The method of cowards who kill innocent people." Excuse me. I mean, what about Gadhafi? What about Gadhafi? What about, I think she mentioned her article, Gbagbo. What about Gbagbo? He hasn't done this as well. Now that we see the French situation and Cote d'Ivoire, that's a little different. There's a nuance there. You understand? There's a difference there. You understand? We were focusing first and foremostly in response to and a comparison, you understand, in a critique and a comparison with Gaddafi on one hand and Osama bin Laden on the next hand. I mean, what is really different? Hasn't Gaddafi and his government admitted to being terrorists? You understand? Haven't they? Have they done that? How do you African American and you black Afrocentrics, how do the Afrocentrics really support Gaddafi? Why? I mean, this seems like insanity. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you will actually support, and a lot of you support Gaddafi above and beyond, you understand, his imperial majesty. You understand? Even some of y'all who are pseudo rastas or rascals, more or less. You know, how is that done? I mean, how do you do that? You understand? I mean, are you a victim of some mind control or something? I mean, can't you think for yourself? On one hand, one's in the community, or some of them, like Miss Joe, is saying that this is justice done, the killing of Bin Laden being dead and the killing of Bin Laden. Okay. You're saying down with terrorism. We agree. I mean, terrorism for us, I mean, slavery. Terrorism for us is a lot of things that Jim Crow is terrorism. Even what's going on right now, those are covert, another form of terrorism, is still terrorism. You understand? The incarceration of all these black men. You understand? I mean, maybe a small percentage for some real incarceratable crimes, but a great majority of them for just basic quality of life crimes and basically to feed the prison industrial complex. That is terrorism too. You know what I'm saying? This is why most of us, the so-called black males, have such high blood pressure. You understand? And there's certain diseases that seem to be specifically targeting us. You understand? Because there's one part is because it's because of all this terrorism and all this stress, PTSD, post-traumatic, post-terrorism, slave disorder, disease that we're affected with. You understand? And defected with. And then when someone's become conscious, many forget that there's a spiritual component to this, to be born again, and the real crux of the matter, the foundation, the virtual Maseret. The Maseret Bamarinya, Maseret in base. It's like to say the base. In fact, Maseret on a level would be similar to Qaeda or Qaeda, you understand, in the Arabic, but don't confuse it too. You understand? The basic idea by Masaratu, you understand, is the foundational matter. You know, the foundation. No other foundation can be laid for us. You understand? We can't lay a so-called Egyptic and a Kemetic foundation before we recognize our Ethiopian and our Hebrew connection. That's just a duh point. You understand? But because many of I don't want to say our people, even though technically they are potentially our people. You understand? But for they are people. But for the gospel's sake, I just thought about a word from scripture where it says that for the gospel's sake, which is the good news of Haile Selassie and his Christ, they are enemies. You understand? But because of the fathers, because of the ancestors, even the Pan-African, the revolutionary fathers, and the father of all those fathers, the fathers of modern Africa, is Kedemawi Haile Selassie. But it's ones like Gaddafi, you know what I'm saying? Gaddafi that tried to shit on the legacy, literally, of his imperial majesty. You understand? And actually confounded the real work and the purpose of the OAU. He was a dissembler in your midst, a Bedouin. Everything that we said, we showed you the Quran. You don't want to see that even their Quran, Muhammad, you understand, and their book even testifies to the nature of these people, that being without faith and full of hypocrisy. And this is what we clearly see, and we're seeing this hypocrisy among some of y'all, to say that this is justice done, the killing of Bin Laden, or terrorists, down with terrorism, and especially for our part, we will say because of what was done at the Kenya embassy and Tanzania embassy. And the Kenya embassy was located at the conjunction or the cross streets of Haile Selassie, I think, Boulevard or Street, and Moi or Moi, which in French means I. So the Kenya U.S. embassy in Kenya that was bombed in 1998, and so many innocent black people, African people, lost their lives, men, women, and children, and many others also lost their lives in that. You understand? Because of that, because of that, and if nothing else, in our opinion. You understand? Proving that ones like Bin Laden and others are down, were down with that. You understand? As well as acts they have done against Ethiopia and terrorism they have done in Ethiopia. You understand? As well. You understand? Then they need the same justice done. So of course we're saying from our own point of view. See from the regular so-called American point of view, it's because of the Twin Towers. But see, for us as elect Rastafari, we say that this is justice done because Osama bin Laden and his clique and his group and the Mohammedans and the rest of these pale red radical Arabs who are trying to take over Africa in the name of religion, pseudo religio politics, you understand, or Islamic fascism is what they're trying to do because of what they did to our African people and what they continue to do, stirring up brother against brother. Now, does this mean that the white people or the Europeans haven't done it? Of course they have. That's what we said from the very outset, that we're between, and the Africa situation, we're between two polar opposites, two extremes. It's Africa that's really at the heart of this war on terror. You understand? And a lot of y'all are not getting it. Even the careless so-called Ethiopians, they don't get it. You understand? They don't get it. You understand? But the method of cowards who kill innocent people, such as these terrorism acts and the terrorism act that happened in Kenya, is extremely thought-provoking. And not that we're forgetting about Tanzania, because people died there, innocent people died there as well. Black people, African people died there. But it's because of where, you understand, the Kenya U.S. Embassy bombing took place. It was on Haile Selassie, I think it was Street or Boulevard or Avenue. I gotta remember right now. I know it was Haile Selassie. It was a road, street, or boulevard, and Moi. You understand? Haile Selassie and I Street. In other words, that's how it'll be interpreted. Haile Selassie and I Street. That's where that Kenya U.S. Embassy was located. I mean, don't you get it? So of course we understand that is justice done, but we interpret it. Mainly, you understand, the crux of the matter, why he should have got what he got perhaps long time ago if they had given, you understand, bin Laden what he should have got after he bombed the embassy that was located in Kenya at Haile Selassie and Moi Street. You understand? Then perhaps the 9/11, September 11th, 2001 incident wouldn't have happened. You understand? Perhaps it wouldn't have happened. You understand? But when things happen in Africa and even Sudan and other places and the Horn of Africa and Somalia and terrorism against Ethiopia, you understand, and Ethiopians' ancient black Christianity, Christian and Judaic and Hebrew roots, you understand, they don't do nothing. And we say, well, the African Union is letting Africa down. Yes, yes, we agree with you that the African Union is definitely not living up to the great aims and expectation of Haile Selassie. And then we also, over here, the African Americans and you so-called revolutionary Pan-Africans, whatever you want to, y'all to blame too, because you reject the head cornerstone. You understand? You reject the father of the true revolutionary modern Africa. The father of the true revolutionary modern Africa is none other than the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie I, elect of God, King of Kings of Ethiopia. That's the official title. Like it or lump it. You understand? But more to come, my people, my brothers and sisters. We went a little bit over on this particular reasoning right here, but it's because the matter is just it's just so pivotal that we really engage this particular issue. You understand? Because it's been far too long that this issue has not properly, you understand, has not been properly addressed by us. And as many of you know, there's more to come, and this is why we put out that foundational lecture. You understand? There's more nuances and details. It was like a logistical kind of overview. African Zionism. You see, some confused people don't understand, and they're more, and some niggas, black folks are more concerned about the Palestinian and the struggle over there in North upper northeast Africa, that's where the state of Israel is. They're more concerned about that over there than really what's going on in Africa. And that's the problem with niggas, that you niggas can't focus. You're all over the place. You understand? First things first. You understand? Ethiopia tick them. Yehuda yik them. Ethiopia tick them. Yehuda yik them. Ethiopia tick them. Yehuda yik them. Learn what that means. Salam to my brothers and sisters and the rest of y'all. Repent. You understand? Repent. You understand? Repent before it's too late.